the other aspects in the Islamic doctrine that was codified and started to take their forms after the death of Prophet and his companions. Many various sciences related to Islam also grew and evolved intricately. For instance, the Quranic studies, the study of Hadith, the science of Islamic law, and other sciences pertaining to theological studies. What about Sufism? Did it stem from Islam? Let's talk about Sufism. Around 100 years after the death of Muhammad, when Muslims started differentiating between the authentic Islam and the fake Islam, between spiritual Muslims and Muslims who supported the depraved monarch, a variety of sophistic concepts pertinent to self-cleansing and heart-purifying commenced gaining the precious position. This does not mean that the concept and the practice had not existed in the first century of Islam. Even if there had been such influential concept and practice, they had not been codified well, formulated and discussed further and more complex. Sufism or Tasawwuf can simply be understood as a sort of Islamic mysticism. It is well known that mysticism is not special for Islam, but it occupies all religions or the systems of belief. Therefore, it is easy to see Sufism not too different from other religions' mysticism. However, Sufism has its unique characteristics inspired directly by Islam. It is slapdash enough putting a blame on Sufism as the replication of other religions' mysticism. Thus, it didn't come from Islam originally. Etymologically, Sufism or Tasawwuf derives from Arabic tasawwafa yatasawwafu tasawwufan. Islamic scholars do not have the same opinion on from where the origin of the word was. First, several state that it comes from Suf, one who wears coarse woolen garb. Coarse woolen clothes were traditionally linked to the practice of asceticism and mysticism. Wearing coarse woolen garb was a symbol of humility at that time. Second, another explanation traces its lexical root to Suf, which in Arabic means row. It refers to those who always pray in the front row, because praying in the front row obtains bigger reward than praying in the second row. Sufis always pray in the front row to get bigger reward. Third, several scholars assert that the lexical root of the word is sofa, meaning purity. It means that Sufis are those who always purify themselves in front of God by way of ascetic practice, mujahadatun nafs. Fourth, Tasawwuf alludes to Sufa, the veranda of Al-Masjid An-Nabawi, Nabawi Mosque, where several of the Prophet Muhammad's companions stayed to spend their time worshipping God. Fifth, several also surmise that the term Tasawwuf comes from the ancient Greek word Sophia, wisdom. Let's try to trace several opinions on the external or non-Islamic influences on Sufism, and then we'll consider whether or not Sufism is authentic. First, Christianity. Sufis are surmised to have been influenced by Christianity. If we examine the lexical root of the word Tasawwuf, Suf, woolen dress, that culture had been practiced in Christianity. Nicholson asserts the influence of Christianity through its hermits, monks, and heretical sects was twofold, ascetic and mystical. Undeniably, several Sufis like Ahmad bin al-Ahwari and Ibrahim bin Adham had contact with Christian hermits and monks to discuss asceticism. Second, Neoplatonism. At the beginning, Sufism was supposedly influenced by Neoplatonism. Indeed, in the 9th and 10th century, when Sufism was flourishing widely, Islamic work did the activity of translation from the Greek philosophy, and Neoplatonism was no exception. One of the Sufis who is alleged to have been influenced by Neoplatonism's thought is Dhunnun al-Misri. Several concepts in Sufism are also regarded as a result of Neoplatonism's influence, such as hulul, the infusion, ittihad, a holy communion, and wahdatul wujud, the unity of being. Third, Gnosticism. As Nicholson reports, Sufism is influenced by Gnosticism, even though direct evidence is not available. Fourth, Buddhism. Ignaz Gogia states that Sufism was much influenced by Buddhism. In addition, he continues saying that there was a similarity between Ibrahim bin Adham and Siddhartha Gautama, both of whom left their wealth to take an ascetic life. Moreover, the use of rosary beads is assumed to have been influenced by Buddhists. Besides, according to Gogia, there is essentially a similar understanding of fana, annihilation of self in Sufism, and nirvana in Buddhism. It is not easy to simply take a conclusion whether or not Sufism comes from Islam. To be honest, Sufism we understand now had not been appeared in the era of the Prophet Muhammad, both etymologically and theoretically. As long as Sufism is perceived as the movement of asceticism, we can affirm that it had been a lifestyle of the Prophet Muhammad. He was well known for his very asceticism, though nobody called him a Sufi. In the Quran also, there is no word mentioning tasawwuf literally. If we refer to the other meanings of tasawwuf, such as sofa, purity, Al-Quran explains many times about that. Purifying the soul is the pillar of being religious. One of the verses explaining about soul purifying is, "And by the soul and he who proportioned it, and inspired it with discernment of its wickedness and its righteousness, he has succeeded who purifies it, and he has failed who instills it with corruption." Terminologically, there are a large number of definitions of Sufism. The definitions of it are as many as the Sufis defined it. Al-Junaid, for instance, defines that Sufism is cleansing the heart from disturbing emotions, striving to get rid of the influence of lower instincts, avoiding the cause of lust, approaching the holy qualities of spirituality, keeping the promise with God, and following the example of the Prophet in matters of the Sharia. The easier way to comprehend Sufism is probably by knowing its characteristic and nature. If Sufism is seen from its conspicuous characteristics, we can conclude 2 points. First, Sufism is depicted as a mystical experience. In regard, Sufism is a state enabling to disclosure of God or the ultimate reality, resulting from inspiration permeating through the heart and not resulting from the knowledge by acquisition. And second, Sufism is portrayed as the implementation of moral value in the hope of purifying the soul. This can be gained by the physical and psychical practice and asceticism to avoid the worldly things. By such ascetic practice, Sufis can arrive at certain conditions which lead them to experience fana, annihilation, and baqa, subsistence, 2 most quintessential stages in Sufism, so that they feel the revelation of the secrets of all things called mukashafa. Noticing the 2 points I've mentioned, probably we think that mysticism of other religions is the same as Sufism. Nevertheless, we cannot simplify this problem by dividing it into 2 questions. Was Sufism influenced by other concepts of philosophy or religions, and did Sufism fully originate by the doctrine of Islam? Actually, we can still go on to question. Was the emergence of Sufism inspired by the doctrine of Islam and then influenced by external doctrines? Did all the teachings of Sufism come from the doctrine of Islam, or only several of them and the other came from external doctrines? Did Sufism emerge at the first generation of Islam or fully after it? We do not need to answer all of those questions in this video, but the most important and relevant question is, if Sufism was inspired by external doctrines or teachings, is it still in line with the doctrine of Islam or not? For the latter question, we can calmly answer affirmation that even if the external teachings have influenced Sufism, Sufism is not contrary to the doctrine of Islam at all. Here, we need to emphasize the uniqueness of Sufism even if it is influenced by the external teachings or doctrines. The uniqueness of Sufism is that Sufism is based upon the doctrine of Tawhid, unity in Islam. According to me, it is such a fundamental doctrine that becomes a substratum and shade as well as compass. We must not be stubborn to deny that other teachings had probably influenced Sufism, in spite of the fact that Sufism itself was also inspired by the doctrine of Islam. The encounter between Islam and other cultures is not mysterious and secret anymore. Thus, it is possible for the Sufis to build their teachings due to the external influence. Although actually Sufism as mysticism in general is certainly a product of mystical experience which is exceedingly personal. So what is your opinion? Give me your viewpoints, we'll discuss it further. See you.